are here. It is more Mothers of Real Estate. I am joined by the amazing, I am Peely, even though it says Jason P. I'll go fix that in a bit. I am joined by the amazing Stephanie Betters, Melissa Johnson, and Becca Shea. So today we are going to dive a little deeper into motherhood. I know the last session we said we were going to dive into money, and I know you were all waiting for that, desperately waiting for us to talk about money. Instead, we have a few more questions about motherhood and how that affects us, how that affects our businesses, how that affects our marriages, how that just affects. And this is Mothers of Multifamily. So it is needed. We need to focus this one more time. So Becca, Stephanie, what are your questions? Because you guys really wanted to dig a little deeper on this. Why don't you take it? Becca, take it over.
Oh, I was going to let Stephanie go because she said after last week, she was like, I had all these questions that I wanted to know more about, and I ran out of time.
I know. I feel like we ended on like a note last week. We're like, crap, we have to finish,
There's so much to say about being a mom.
I know.
There's always so much, right? So let's dive in. Stephanie, what were those questions that we didn't get answered?
Well, I think that the two things that like really stuck with me and made me think since the last time we spoke was, number one, the thought of like having to hide motherhood, right? Like in your job, in your career, I think that, and maybe this is a self-limiting belief, but like I have always felt that, especially when I was younger and like interviewing for positions and stuff, the people were like, oh, she's young, she's going to have babies. It was seen as like a negative, right? So I felt like I needed to offset this perceived weakness that people may have for me. And now the context I'm thinking about for that is medicine, and heart surgery and everything I'm doing in the hospital, generally male dominated, right? So I didn't want to have this perceived weakness of being a mother. I wanted to make sure like I had my stuff together. Like I wouldn't have to, drop everything to go home. I would make sure my home life was taken care of. And I also wanted to make sure that it wasn't perceived that like, oh, I'm gonna have babies and like never come back or like whatever. So I coming into that, I felt like I had to kind of downplay it a little bit. Not that downplay like I'm not proud of it, but downplay like, I don't know. I don't really know quite how to articulate it.
I know it's an option. Let's pretend it's not on the table right now. Just hire me.
Right. And of course, it's not like illegal. You can't ask anybody that. Like, are you going to have babies? That's not a question you can ask people. But I don't know. I kind of felt like what's the proper way to deal with that? And I wanted to kind of talk to you girls a little bit more about that. And then we were thinking about like tolerating motherhood in other people was a question too. Like, am I tolerant of other mothers the way I would hope to be tolerated, as a mother myself? And that the example of my employee that we had to let go because she didn't show up because she had to homeschool and she assumed that I would understand just because I'm a mother. I was like, okay, obviously I tolerate moms, but we have to have some sort of.
That's not why you let her go. To clarify, she just didn't show up.
She didn't show up. She plain old didn't show up.
She gave the excuse of homeschooling. That was, yeah.
So anyway, I just felt like we could talk about these things for so long and at least a little bit more. And, Melissa, when you were talking about having a baby at 16, the first thing that came to my mind was like, and hiding motherhood, like, how did you navigate that? Right. Like being 16 and like high school and then, developing your career moving forward. I feel like that must have been something that at least came up a little bit for you.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I guess just jump right in, right?
Break those apart into like separate questions.
I know, really more separate.
Let's start with the pregnant at 16 because that's what I wanted to talk more about.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that. That was not an easy thing by any means. That actually was really like one of the hardest things that I've ever done. Was just to be pregnant at 16, and so you're walking around the hallways of your school with a big belly, and of course nobody else is pregnant, and so it's just it was very, very difficult. I don't think there's any like good way to say that. It was not pleasant at all. You know, I mean, I love my daughter and everything. But as a child myself, having a child and, you know, going to school and having everybody stare at you and talk about you. And I really feel like that is a pivotal moment in my life that really shaped who I am, because, you know, I had to get tough. You know, that was my first real lesson in being mentally tough, you know, because I'll never forget, like one of my classes was speech. And so I remember having to go up in front of everybody with my belly, which wasn't big, but still, you know, and have to stand up there in front of everybody and act like a regular kid, you know, just giving a speech and really having everybody stare at you. And I just remember that feeling. I remember going home and just feeling just really overwhelmed with all of it and really kind of depressed, I guess, a little bit.
How did you get through it?
You know, I feel like something happened in my brain where it was just like, I've noticed this about myself. So when things get really, really tough, I tend to break down at first. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm not tough right out the gate ever. I usually like, there's some bathroom floor crying, you know, that's my preferred place to cry is on the bathroom floor. And then I found out one of my daughters does it too. And we kind of laughed about it, but, you know, but then once I kind of, something in my mind was just like, you know what? There's nothing I can change about this situation. Like, I'm going to have this baby. I can't walk around and act like it's not there.
Yeah.
You know? And so, and for me, not having it wasn't an option. So that wasn't even, I just couldn't, I didn't want to go there. But something shifted in my mind where I realized like I just have to do it. And sometimes there's just those moments where it's just like, you just do what you got to do because it has to be done. And you don't really have a choice in it. So it's like, I can sit here and cry about it, or I can just get up, go to school, just like do what needs to be done and just get through each day. So I tried not to think about too far ahead, which is kind of difficult for me because I am a long-term thinker. Sorry, there's a jet flying over. Is that loud?
It's not bad.
I can still hear you.
Okay. So it just became one of those things where like, it wasn't easy, but I just had to like kind of compartmentalize that for the time being and just get through each day, you know? And then once I had her, you know, her dad was freaked out and stuff like that. And he pretty much took off. So, like then I had,
he was in high school too, right?
Yeah, he was older than me, but yeah, he was in high school.
Were you a junior? 16?
Huh?
Were you a junior?
I was a sophomore.
Sophomore.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
you still had 2 more years of high school with a baby at home.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, lucky for me, although my family wasn't happy about what happened, they were supportive. And so that enabled me to, you know, thank God for my mom. Like, she was the best. And I know that couldn't have been easy for her because, you know, I have a younger brother too. So my brother and I are 14 years apart. And so when my daughter was born, my brother was only 2.
What?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So my mom didn't work. She stayed home and took care of us. That was always her job. But then she, you know, she took care of Ashley for me too, so I could go to school because me not finishing school wasn't an option.
Mm-hmm.
And I just pushed through it and tried to have somewhat of a normal life. But there was always that awareness of that I have a child, I have somebody else to take care of now. So I couldn't be like a normal teenager. I mean, I could every once in a while, you know, but I always felt bad asking my mom to watch the kids so I could go out on a date or go out with friends or something like that, you know, because she watched her all day while I was at school. So I didn't really do a whole lot after I had her. I just really went to school and worked. And that was the other thing. Like, I had to get a job because somebody had to buy the diapers and the formula and her clothes and all that. So I feel like all those things really just made me mentally tougher and just really made me realize what I was actually capable of. And I think if that wouldn't have happened to me, I would have been a totally different person. I don't think I would have known about myself that I can do what it takes. You know, when things get tough, I mean, yeah, again, like the breakdown, but then you can pull through it, but you can't do it alone. And I think that's like the biggest thing, because if it wouldn't have been for my mom, you know, I wouldn't have been able to do it. There's just no way.
What was it like, you know, when you were like a junior and a senior, right? So you're not pregnant. There's not that visible sign that you have a kid, but everyone, I'm sure, knew. I'm sure high schools tend to be small places, right? So like,
I went to a small high school too.
So how did people treat you after that?
I think, well, you know, Ashley wasn't with me at school every day, so it was kind of easy to get back into my normal routine. But I was never really a person that had like a crap ton of friends or anything anyway. It was always kind of just hanging around with other groups of people and just really have a very small circle of friends. And I kind of laugh about it now because we were all a little bit of misfits in a way. So we kind of banded together. One of my other friends ended up having a baby, I think her senior year also. And another one of my friends got married in high school. She wasn't pregnant or anything, but she got married. And so she had issues at home, but, you know, I don't know. We just all kind of supported each other as friends. And I had some really great friends. Like, I'm not going to lie, there were some mean girls. There was one really mean girl in particular that I had a hard time kind of dealing with that.
Okay, what's her name?
Look
around right now.
She wasn't very nice. I'll put it like that. But now that I'm older, like I can give grace to that situation because she didn't know any better, is all I can say. You know, at the time, it was very hurtful to me to know that somebody's going around talking about you behind your back. And I was a good girl. I'm gonna tell y'all, like, I wasn't the kind of girl that I didn't do bad things. I didn't run around. I didn't sneak out. I didn't lie to my parents. I just didn't I wasn't a troublemaker. I was a really good student. I was, you know, honor society student. I graduated with honors. You know, I mean, I was smart, but I just didn't, I don't know. I just didn't have a lot of people, but the people that I had in my circle were very important to me and very supportive. And yeah.
And
thinking about that again, just kind of feeling that moment, what that was like. It's been
going back into that space. That must be, I mean, just everything that you went through, from the bullying to the pregnancy to you being innately, I mean, I believe people don't really change. They become more of the person you are. And you, Melissa, are a good person. You are an innately good person. You have this innate mental toughness. And I know you and I have talked about this because we have both done 75 hard. And that's a huge thing that they talk about is mental toughness. But you actually went through something that had to solidify or give you a thicker skin because you became a mother at such a young age. I mean, so much that you have just imparted, and thank you for sharing. Oh my goodness, thank you for sharing, because there's so many mothers out there, and we can actually segue into one of unless you have more to share, we can segue into Stephanie's other question about giving, I'm not going to say tolerate, giving too much grace maybe to some people that don't have the mental toughness that you have, and excuses instead. So why don't we segue into that question? Unless you have more questions on that amazing story, Melissa. Oh my goodness.
I had one follow-up question that I kind of, for people listening and watching this, right? I mean, I know this was a long time ago, but obviously her father didn't stay in the picture. And there's probably some people out there right now in a tough spot or recently, you know, divorced or separated that are in the single parenting world. And I was kind of curious what advice you would have for those people who are like in the thick of it right now, looking back?
I think like the top thing is just having a good support system, whether it's your family or it's friends. Like I said, my mom was very supportive for me, but my friends were too. And it was really funny how even at a young, even being high school girls, how those girls rallied around me and were just like accepting of the situation. And they loved my daughter, we all loved on her and stuff. I have pictures of all of us like, squeezing her cheeks and stuff as a baby and everything. And my friends, my close friends, my circle of people, they never once made me feel, like I was wearing like an A on my shirt, scarlet letter thing or something. Because that's what I felt like. I felt like everybody was thinking of me that way. But now that I think about it, it probably really wasn't as bad as I thought it was, maybe. But having that support system, I think it made it so much easier just to be able to get up and go to school every day. And I had my friends and they were, kind to me, and they made me feel normal, at least during the school day. It gave me some feeling of being normal and not just being, some weirdo with a kid in high school. So I think anybody that's going through anything like that, if you've got friends you can lean on, or because when you're trying to do all this by yourself, it is hard. I'm not going to say it's easy at all. Having a support system helps, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still difficult to do. I still had to go to school every day. I had to come home. I had to bust out my homework really fast. And then I had to go work for 4 to 6 hours and then come home late at night, when my daughter was sleeping already, and, missing out on some of that, isn't easy, but
and we, now I remember even working my corporate job, I had these moments, especially when my babies were babies and they would sleep, they go to bed so early and they wake up. Like there were days where I only saw my daughters for like an hour or two when they were awake. And I remember having pity parties for myself. And here you had probably many days where you barely got to spend any time with her, and yet you still have a super strong relationship. So I think that's probably one takeaway, is that like, for people in that space thinking I don't have enough time or I don't spend enough time, like it's quality, not necessarily quantity.
I was just going to say that it really is about the time that you spend with them. Are you spending that time being engaged with them, or are you just spending the time being in the room with them?
And as high action-packed mothers, we all know that we have to do what we have to do to get it done. And you, Melissa, had to learn that at such a young age, and yet you persevered and you became this amazing woman that you are today. Stephanie, other questions?
No, and I think that it's such a testament to how important having a tribe is. And I don't know, I feel like so many times in my life that having that support system and my tribe of ladies, and it could depending on like what I was going through at the time, like it may have been different people, but that really impacted me too in such a huge way. And I feel that way now, in this stage of life, in this chapter with you guys and my friends now. They're a little bit different than they were before, but it's still my tribe. And I think if I didn't have that, I would be in a totally different space, moving forward from there, how did you manage it? How did you start building a company with your babies in tow? Did you feel like you had to downplay that ever? Like I was describing me feeling like somehow like compensating for a perceived weakness or a perceived like obstacle to success. So obviously that wasn't an obstacle for you. You're extremely successful. But how did you handle that kind of outward looking at you while you're growing and building and everything?
I think I was just going to add too, just real quick, because this was on my mind for a second, but just knowing that like that's sometimes it's just seasons of your life, like that was a particular season of my life, but to your question, like that was a season of my life. So knowing that, we were going to build this thing, and I guess getting through, I never downplayed being a mom because it's just, like I said before, like, you can't hide it. You've got 5 kids, there's no way around it. People are going to know. But I did a lot of things, especially, so when we started the business, so he wasn't born yet. So I just had the three girls, and really, like, we got them involved a lot. I'm not saying they liked it, but in the beginning, like, we took them with us. We tried to make it like fun, for them. We tried to get them involved, not in a way like we're going to bring you into the business, but just so that it was a way to spend time with them while still accomplishing that goal of starting the business. So, like, we would drive for dollars and we would take the kids with us. And then we would always do some kind of like a treat, when we were done. Like, we're going to drive for dollars for an hour, and then we're going to go get ice cream, or we're going to go rent a movie or something, So we tried to do it that way, but, or we would have them, like, we'd let them put stamps on the envelopes, or something like that, just because they were older and they could sort of be involved in everything.
Yeah.
And then as we were kind of growing, Sophie was born a couple of years later, and then I just really had to work around her. I didn't want it to be the other way around. I didn't want my job to revolve around my family. I wanted to be able to do what I needed to do with the family and then squeeze the work in the other places. Does that make sense?
I think that's the beauty too of being an entrepreneur, is that it's lifestyle by design, probably more so than any other field, Right.
And it might mean like staying up late at night after the kids go to bed to get some stuff done. But I didn't compromise any of my time with my kids in order to grow the business.
Right.
And I think
I want to like step on a soapbox for 1 second, because I feel so strongly about this, especially when COVID hit, like, people feeling like they had to apologize to their businesses for having kids. Like, this pandemic hit and threw all our worlds into a tailspin. And I can't tell you the number of people who are like, I just can't fit in work and homeschooling. And I was like, right, you can't keep living life the way you did. And you got to stand up for yourself with your business and say, like, my family comes first. This is what I need. And that's the other thing for people in corporate jobs. I know this is the moms of real estate, but like, really, like you control your life. Don't let your life control you.
Right.
And I think with motherhood, same thing, like even at the hospital, Stephanie, right? Like, being unapologetic, saying, like, I need this time. How do we work my schedule around it? Because I've already proven myself as a top performer for you, right? Like, and I think with all of us, right? If you know you're a top performer, like, recognize that and then say, I've given you 110%. I need you to accept 70% and work with me right now.
Right.
And to piggyback off of that, like, knowing that for ourselves, but for people on our team too. So, like, for example, in my organization, my lead manager is a female. She's got 2 kids, and she's been working from home, after COVID hit and we had to quarantine and stuff like that. She's like, I have to work from home because I have to, kids can't go to school. And I was in the same boat, but I know that she is a high performer. And so we worked that out to where she could be home, homeschool her kids, and she was still getting her work done, but telling her that, like, being vocal about it, like, let's work together to figure this out. Like, we got to keep working on the business, otherwise nobody's going to get paid. But
I think that's that mutual respect, of course your employees and their personal lives, and my gosh, I have so many examples of how they are so interweaving, and I think that makes, we have a beautiful perspective on that, being mothers ourselves that are working. Like, I don't think there's going to be anybody who understands better than us the trials and tribulations of being a working mom and like having to balance it, And with that being said, I think there should be that mutual respect. Like, of course, we still have to perform, like we've got to figure out a way to do it. Like, let's overcome, let's defeat the obstacle. Let's work together in a way that like we can still move forward, and that tolerance of each other, and understanding of each other, I think is what is so important. And after we started talking about that last week, it really kind of like triggered this thing with me that like, I have a hard time with giving up when there's an obstacle in the way. You know what I mean? And I think we all have our own obstacle, and like, kind of another really relatable one besides parenthood is like exercise and weight loss. Like we all have this perceived obstacle that we can't achieve because I can't exercise because I have kids, or I can't exercise because I work nights, or whatever it is. Like we all have these things, and I just refuse to let motherhood be one of those, like let alone like anything else. And so I have this thing that like, no, you can do it. Like that's not allowed to say no to that, So I definitely find myself like being triggered with people who meet an obstacle and say like, I can't because, instead of like, let's try, or like, how do we get around it? Or, and I do think that women, we do this to ourselves with exercise. We do this with the house, with our jobs, and so many things, that we can't do something because we're a mom. And I hate that so much. You can do everything.
Not a priority. It's like saying I don't have enough time. It's actually just not a priority.
Exactly. You make time for the things that are important.
For sure.
And the thing with high achievers on your team, I mean, when I noticed during COVID, now I have one person who works for me, Bethany, and she's awesome. I brought her from my rehabbing company over to 7-figure flipping. And like sometimes I feel bad because high achievers put more pressure on themselves than you could ever put on them. I mean, that's how I feel too. Like I hate that I only have 7 hours to work today instead of 9 or 10, but I'm by golly going to do the best I can in that time. So yeah, but the non-culture fits, the like non-performers, Stephanie, like they'll out themselves,
right?
With comments like,
I can't
get it. I had to drink 3 bottles of wine today. You understand? You're a wino too.
No, and going to your question before, Stephanie, that's the whole difference between high performers and those mothers, or people in general. It doesn't have to be mothers, who say, I can't, I won't, excuses. And you can tolerate that as much or a little as you want, but it goes back to your company culture. I mean, how much are you going to tolerate? And
and I know a lot of stay-at-home moms who are high performers too. Like I don't want them to feel like we're saying if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're not a high performer. Because dude, I know some amazing get after it moms. So.
Some of the best entrepreneurs I know are stay-at-home moms, because they do everything they can and to put together that the business of their family.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? How do we use this information that we have now of mental toughness, of starting at such a young age, Melissa, of tolerating people to a certain extent, but when do you stop giving these people grace? When do you stop giving a mother grace when she's giving you excuses after excuses and using her children and her family as an excuse? How do you stop without sounding like you're not
started? Rights princess.
I think it just comes down to communication. When stuff starts breaking down, and having that honest conversation, and just like, hey, I hear you saying you can't do these certain things because you have kids. Can you talk to me more about that, and make them talk it out with because they might not realize that they're doing it as often as they are, but 2, maybe if you put some light on it, if you make them talk it out, then there could be some more thought put into what they're doing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment to give a shout out. I'm looking at some of these comments. Priscilla and Vera have tagged a whole bunch of other women to come and take a look and to hear what we're saying. So Priscilla and Vera, you are both super awesome, and we love each other.
Thank you. Doing great.
I think I did want to mention, it was to Stephanie's question a while back too, was, when you asked about how it was starting your business and stuff like that with the kids and everything. One thing that I've been thinking about after you said that was, I think now that I'm looking at it, I think I realize now that I think we talked about this before about having the martyr problem, where we feel like we have to do everything and be everything and like always be performing at a peak level, whether it's being a mom, like we have to juggle everything and we have to do it perfectly all the time. And I never really felt like that before until I started a business.
Right.
And when I felt like that, like I really had to prove myself, like, okay, we have this business and I'm going to still be like an awesome mom. And, my house is always going to be clean and my laundry's always going to be done. It's like a pipe dream. But I feel like almost in a way, that's kind of where that martyr thing started for me. And then to take it even a step further was not leaning on my husband at that time enough too, because that led to other problems down the road, just as far as like squashing things and just trying to handle stuff on my own and not, so I talk about a support system, but then when it came, I didn't look at that the same in the marriage as I did when I was younger with my friends. It's like I have girlfriends and stuff, but like leaning on our husbands too, I could have been more vocal about, hey, I need help. Like I can't manage all this. Like you're going to have to watch this kid while I go on this appointment instead of dragging her in the little carrier basket, to all the appointments with me, which is probably pretty dangerous now that I think about it. But, like I just did it because it had to be done. And like nobody else was going to watch her. So I had to take her with me, but I never asked either. And I think I could have been better about that and communicating with him. Like I'm overloaded, help me.
Oh my gosh. I like preach, girl. I feel the same way. I feel like I have to, Zach told me this the other day, and like, sometimes he hits me with these truth bombs. I'm like, ugh. But he said to me the other day, he's like, you refuse to have a weakness. And like, then you burn yourself out because you refuse to accept whatever crazy standard you set for yourself. Right. And I'm like, oh, you're so right. But I don't want to have a weakness. And this is my weakness.
Yeah. It's being so right.
I know. I hate when they're so right. But like, and to your point, Melissa, like, I have to choose to lean on people, including my husband. Right. And like, okay, like I need help, or I need like a hug or an emotional like cry session. Like I also cry in my bathroom, by the way. Like if I could count all the times I cry in my bathroom, like it's really sad actually. But
get us some t-shirts.
Like choosing.
I cry in my bathroom.
Yes.
Moms of real estate.
Yes, like bathroom breakdowns.
Are you a cry on the bathroom floor or turn the shower on and cry on the shower floor?
No.
I would sit on my floor and cry.
I got a really fluffy rug next to my bed, next to my tub, and that's where I like to cry.
I don't cry. I just punch people. So
I need to be more like that.
Yeah. I've done a lot of stuff out of anger. I will say that like anger has been very motivating for me as a human.
Still have my sassy pants.
Okay, so I'll just share this real quick. It's kind of embarrassing, but I'm going to just be vulnerable and share it anyway. I kicked a hole in my wall because I was in my house. Yeah, through the sheetrock.
Yeah.
So which kid did you blame it on when you had them come and repair it?
Actually, well, it wasn't a kid that caused me to do it. It was actually a work situation.
Oh no.
But it led to a thing where, we had a fight and I wasn't feeling supportive, and like, just, it was a bad thing. And I just was mad. And so I did the anger thing. I did the Becca. I picked the hole in the wall, but then I went to the bathroom and cried on the floor. Yeah. So I did both.
You're very well balanced in your therapeutic approaches. I like it.
You know where this stems from is that we can't hang up the phone the way we used to. Like, I just want to like slam my phone down. Just like I need like that oomph. And we don't have it. Yeah. We're repressed. We're oppressed in our ability to like. It's not like you can't just click.
That doesn't feel good.
No,
I used to be way more violent. Like I used to very much express my anger or just my strong emotions with my hands and my voice. And I have dialed it back now, which is funny because sometimes I'll meet people and I'll get really mad and I'll like punch them kind of playfully, but a little bit hard. And they'll be like, I can't believe she just punched me. And all my old friends are like, oh man, you got off so light. But I agree because now I'm like, there's just no, I need an outlet.
I need that. Yeah, emojis doesn't cover it, you know.
Always.
I think I'm gonna send you all a punching bag. We're just gonna hang it in.
Oh no,
our
I have one.
Perfect.
I think that's why I started doing CrossFit, because like it's a very intense and there's like ragey music playing and nobody cares if you're like rah and you throw something down on the ground.
I took up Muay Thai.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think we're delving into, just in case somebody has walked in here and we're talking about kicking walls and punching bags and punching people, we're delving into how, and this is true talk, ladies and gentlemen, how we let go of our steam as mothers, because stuff happens as mothers, as wives, and how we martyr ourselves and we take it to this point where we just have to explode. And it's the choice that we made, though. It's the choice that we did. I've done that. I've chosen not to lean on Jason. I've chosen not to lean on my husband when I so needed to. And you like, it's you start stacking these negative things one on top of each other. He didn't do this for me. He didn't do that for me. He didn't do this for me. He didn't do that for me. Stack, 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 until you can't break through it. And then
I love this idea. This, you said the Martyr Complex. I feel like it's come up a couple times in the past couple weeks, and it's so true. Like we do it to ourselves by just taking on so much stuff, and it's like from the outside looking in, everyone else is like, "Dude, chill." Like, no, I don't want to hear you complain because you did this to yourself,
right?
And that's the thing to realize, that, you know, it's rooted in self-awareness. And when I talked to my therapist about this, you know, she's the one that brought up, why do you always martyr yourself? You know, why do you do that? And just like Stephanie, I think for me too, it's because I don't want to show that I'm weak anywhere, because I feel like when people look at me, they need to see a successful, happy person.
Yeah.
And, you know, raging or, you know, asking for help shows that there's a weakness there. And we have to learn how to be okay with being, I don't even think it's weak. I think it's just, there's nothing wrong with asking for help, especially with our spouse. Like, we both created these kids. Why is it only my responsibility to take care of them all the time?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why do I always have to find the babysitter or the nanny or work my schedule around that? But you never have to. I know I'm preaching here. So.
Babysitters, right? It's so hard.
Yeah, and it gets really frustrating. But now I know, you know, hindsight 2020, had I been better at communicating those frustrations earlier, it wouldn't have built up to the point where it did. So I think just, you know, talking to your spouse or significant other or partner, whatever, and, you know, asking for that help. And there's no shame or nothing wrong with that, because they're in it too. They're a parent. It's 50-50. You know, there's no reason why we have to carry 100% all the time. You know, and maybe sometimes those percentages get skewed. Maybe sometimes for a season, I'm more 70 and he's more 30 or something, you know, depending on what you're working on or going through. But if you have that other person, you know.
Well, you guys, it's not, I feel almost that what I do, and this is kind of like the thing that I'm trying to become more aware of, is I just like put my head down and I don't really even pay attention to how I'm feeling, right? Like I don't even like have that awareness of where I am until it's way down the line. And it's funny because talk about like self-awareness and like building a business, and like I've never read more like self-help books or like business books or like balanced leadership books and all the, I've read all this stuff, and I've only really applied it at least right out of the gate to the business. And like, how aware are you on what your weaknesses are as an owner, as an employee, as having a role in a company, right? I'm compensating for this, and I'm not, you know, I should be more detail oriented. I should be more people, whatever it is. Like, I'm very aware of what that is in the business, but I've had to like make a conscious effort to like check in with even where I stand on a personal level. And I've found that if I don't do that, like, how is Zach supposed to know, my husband? How am I supposed to connect on like that person level if I'm not even self-aware? You know what I mean? And I feel like that's really where it starts. It's just the self-sacrificial thing. And you end up sacrificing, you know, family time and spouse relationships. Like, you just sacrifice that because it's you, and like you're used to putting your head down and you don't check in. I do that to myself, and I have to like snap myself out of it. And I really rely on my husband to snap me out of that too and be like, stop it. you know, and I have to listen to him and not get defensive. And it becomes this whole like, gosh, this.
Do you get defensive too? Do you get super
What?
defensive?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Me
yeah.
too.
Initially I do. And then I'm like, oh wait, okay. Because I don't like being vulnerable or, you know, or having weakness, like, right. And I have to like, I don't know if you guys feel that same way, but I feel like I don't really pay attention to myself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah, I was convinced this morning that that I have coronavirus which I just went to the beach yesterday, but I couldn't get a deep breath in. And Matt told me a few weeks ago that like one of the symptoms of people who tend to be asymptomatic is they like can't get a deep breath. Stephanie, true? Have you heard this? Oh, I don't know where
it's a significant symptom of anxiety. Like you can't get a satisfying.
So then I was like, I feel good. Like it's been a great week. I don't like mentally, I don't feel like I'm stressed. But then as soon as I went through that, I ran my like mental checklist of things that happen when I get stressed out in my body. And I'm like, oh crap. Like I get sores in my mouth. I can't get a deep breath. I'm like, forget what the other one is. But you know, I was like, damn it. How did I get to this point? What happened?
Right.
So it's the event in the middle of July. That's what I decided. I'm going to be stressed for the next 2 weeks until we have this event. So
at least you know, if you're self-aware, then like you can have a glass of wine, you can talk, you can go for a walk. But if you don't, if you're not even aware, then you can't even compensate, you can't cope.
Yeah. And I don't have coronavirus. I'm convinced now. The other one.
Well, we are almost at the 45-minute mark. Becca, if you just mentioned some event, do you want to?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's for our mastermind group. We're getting together in Nashville, you know, fingers crossed, everything continues on a good path with this pandemic. 7-figure flipping guys. We love it. That's how we all met. And I run the membership development, which my job is to run accountability groups and love on people. That was literally the job description I was giving at the beginning when I took the
job
role.
description for you.
So I'm very excited, even though I'm anxious. It's just because it's like when you throw a party at your house, right? You want it to be awesome, but you're super excited for it. So that's where I'm feeling. But everybody out there can buy their Flip Hacking Live tickets. Oh, I can't show it.
There you go. No, Becca's not taking her shirt off. She's just showing us her shirt.
Which I was doing my camper rehab today. It's now become my work shirt. But stay tuned for more TikToks on camper renovations.
I love you.
And next week, we're really good. Are we having an episode next week because it is 4th of July weekend? Okay.
Oh, yes, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay to do it?
Let's get it in, unless you ladies have something else to do, because this is Mothers of Real Estate, and we run the show. We run the world. We run the world. So right now we're planning on doing a show where you're going to be doing it on money. It's sort of going to be July 4th weekend. It's going to be Thursday before July 4th, and I'm still planning on being here. Are you ladies?
We're going to get real about the journey to financial independence, right? Like I'm excited. We don't talk about money enough. Like so taboo.
And it's so crazy because I would never have picked this topic for myself because I don't think I'm very financially savvy, but that's my fault. I have become more financially savvy. I've become more adept at reading what my finances are. And I think so many women out there are in the same boat, especially once we get married and we're just like, okay, I'm going to take care of this. You're going to take care of that. And I mean, I didn't need to have a handle on my financial situation because I didn't have any debt. And I had my bank account. I didn't even write checks back in the day. I had one card and it was super easy. And I kept it that way.
When that account's out of money, you just don't spend it anymore.
Exactly. And I just didn't spend money. So I had an account, I had a savings. I didn't invest. This is way back when. But once you start getting into adulthood, folks, and becoming a mother and taking on debt and mortgage, and you have to structure all these things. And then being an investor, that's a whole nother level. And we're going to get into that too. So I cannot wait until next week. Who's gonna moderate me? Because I can just talk. You ladies know I can just talk. So one of you guys are going to have to.
I elect Stephanie. I don't know if she's really above me.
Ooh, Stephanie, are you going to bring the web? You're going to be like, stop healing.
I have questions. So everyone better check their checking account balance before we start, because I want to talk about how much money you have in the bank account, how much you have in retirement, what your plans are, how much you make a year. let's talk about the details.
Okay, let's get detail. Let's dive into the details. I was going to do like an overview, but let's dive in.
I think we should have some details.
I just finished Financial Peace University for the second round. I led it this time, so I can tell you all those things.
Excellent.
All on
I
board
have,
with the
I have
budget.
everything on a spreadsheet somewhere. That's where I'll remember. If you ask me right now, I'd be like, I don't know. That's what I have spreadsheets for. Anywho, I'm going to talk
about
ladies, Melissa, especially you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Well, thank you for letting me rattle on about being a mom again.
I loved it.
I love it.
As soon as
I love your super real story about being pregnant in high school. Like, you're far enough away now that I think you can tell that with some authenticity and some like grace. And I'm sure there was a long time where you wouldn't have been able to give that kind of reprise of it.
And you know what, ladies? Whoever's listening right now, if you have any questions, feel free to always if it's a personal question, of course, feel free to message us. We are all on Facebook. We are all on Instagram, or message us. Go to the comments below this and ask us a question there. Especially if you have a question about money, which is coming up, or you have a question about any of our M's: motherhood, money, mental, and I'm forgetting one: marriage. Don't want to forget the marriage part.
Now you all know why I wanted murder to be one of our pillars.
I know.
We weren't supposed to tell anybody about that one. Now that the cat's out of the bag, we might talk about murder next week. Anywho, ladies, thank you. Stephanie Betters, Melissa Johnson, Becca Shea, and me, Pelia Rusi. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are so incredibly grateful. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.